Well, President Cyril Ramaphosa's address to the nation last night has brought in mixed reviews from political opposition parties. While the DA welcomes the relaxing of some restrictions, it believes the president should have used the opportunity to clean up his executive and joined calls for cabinet reshuffle, specifically targeting the security cluster. The Democratic Alliance's leader, John Steenhuisen, joins us now live. John, thanks for your time. We appreciate it. I want to actually start with the Digital Vibes contract and the SIU report. You're now going a step further to try to get it released. Tell us more.
Well, I think it's important this report is released. I think the President's had it now for a number of weeks and has not acted on it. And I think the public needs to know whether, in fact, Minister Mkhize is going to stay on or whether he's going to go. The President himself yesterday evening spoke very strongly about this being the biggest health crisis that South Africa has faced in post-democratic history. And it would be odd that we're sitting with an acting health minister in the midst of a very, very real and live pandemic with very, very real consequences for the country. And I think that the President owes the country an explanation about whether Minister Mkhize is going to stay on or whether he's going to be removed from his post. But the uncertainty, I think, is untenable. And certainly what we've seen from leaked versions of the report that have made their way into the media, it looks like the findings are adverse in terms of the irregularities and unprocedural behaviour around the awarding of that contract. And the longer the President keeps Mr Mkhize around under these circumstances, and the more damage it does to the credibility of government's response in terms of the coronavirus pandemic.
Yeah. So let's talk then about the cabinet reshuffle, but of course something be that you say should get rid of the health minister and the security cluster ministers as well. The President hasn't really given much thought to that, it seems, because there's no hint even of that happening.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of the problem. I think that what the President could have done yesterday evening is grab the bull by the horns decisively and to demonstrate to South Africa that he is in the driving seat and that he is in charge. It's very, very clear, certainly from the President's own admissions, that he was badly let down by his security cluster, who did not give him the correct information and clearly badly advised him in terms of the response to the KZN crisis, which he first termed was sporadic and ethnic. Now, it was neither ethnic nor sporadic. It was widespread and certainly spilt over into a number of provinces. I would have thought that one of the first things to get back onto the front foot in a crisis like that would be to make sure that there's political accountability for those who have let you down as the President. He has to rely on those ministers to advise him and to give him the correct advice. It's very clear in this instance, and the infighting between that security cluster continues unabated as we speak, that there was no proper advice to the President, and that in fact the situation in KwaZulu-Natal was completely misjudged and underestimated, and the security services were nowhere near prepared for it. There has to be political accountability. I think this is a cornerstone of any functioning democracy, where ministers do well, they're the first in line to get the praise, but then they must also be the first in line to get the responsibility when things go wrong. And things have gone badly wrong in the last fortnight in South Africa. And I think that the citizenry are right to demand some sort of political accountability for the huge damage, the looting, the loss of life, and the huge damage to the international investor sentiment.
John, I was trying to think of possible replacements for ministers in the security cluster, and I was struggling to come up with names. Maybe you have some suggestions.
Mm-hmm. I've got a great list of names from the Democratic Alliance who I think would do an excellent job there, and I'm happy to forward them to the President. It's not my job to pick and choose who the President chooses in the Cabinet, but I think that there's a huge loss of confidence, not necessarily politically, but certainly emotionally and from a fear perspective from many, many South Africans who don't believe that this is a Cabinet that is in control of the situation. I think the President's got a duty as the first citizen and as the head of that Cabinet to shore that up as quickly as possible and to make sure he's got people in those positions who can do a good job. I happen to think the current acting health minister is doing a relatively good job. I certainly think she's doing a better job than her predecessor. Why not make her the full-time health minister? Why retain her in an acting position? Let her continue to do the good work that she's been doing. The vaccine has escalated underneath her leadership. There's certainly been, I think, a great deal more communication. And I think that is a good sign. But as I say, it's not my job to choose the President's cabinet. That's for him to do. But for goodness sake, do something, because people are losing confidence in a big way in what is going on.
Yeah. So you also say that, you're welcoming the 350 Rand social relief grant and it being extended to March 2022, but you're calling for something more sustainable. You say more sustainable measures are needed. What are those?
Well, I think that we've got to reform the economy fundamentally so that we can provide work for people. I think that one thing the last fortnight has shown us is that there are deep underlying issues in South Africa that are not going away. And they only need the smallest spark to ignite them and to fan the flames of what we saw happening in KZN and in Gauteng. That is poverty, it is exclusion, it is people who are marginalised and locked out of the economy. We've got to start reforming the economy to be able to lift those people into work. And the best way of providing people a hand up is to get them into a job where they can provide for themselves, provide for their families, and build a better future for themselves and their families. In the absence of that, you're going to eventually run out of money. You can't give everybody a grant for the foreseeable future. South Africa's finances are already fiscally very, very badly stretched, and that situation is going to be worse thanks to the coronavirus pandemic and poor policy decisions. But we've got to get people working again in South Africa, and that is the key thing. A 42% unemployment rate is not sustainable. Over 70% youth unemployment rate is not sustainable. We've got to get these people into work and create opportunities for them to be able to start up businesses, to be able to find work, and to be able to help contribute to the economy. Speaking to people who are grant recipients, they're very grateful for it. But they keep saying to me the best thing that will help them is a job, a permanent job, where they've got a certainty of income and they can start providing for themselves and their families in a far more meaningful way than a grant could ever do. So I certainly welcome the extension of the grant. I think it's absolutely what we need to bridge poor people over this period. The business relief as well is also welcome. But we're going to have to find far more sustainable long-term solutions to prevent what we saw in KwaZulu-Natal and Gauteng spilling over into the rest of the country.
All right. Thank you so much for your time. Appreciate it. Democratic Alliance leader John Steenhuisen.